Okay,
Can we shut the door, Robert?
let's have dumpies on that couch. So, my coordinator, Robert Bird, is going to be giving a presentation on the California abortion industry. Robert, yeah, boo, not boo Robert though. Robert has got encyclopedic knowledge on the ins and outs of the abortion industry in the state of California. He's your man, he's your guy, he knows the numbers, he knows how it works. He's here to present the info to you and then tell you about some of our campaigns that we're doing to, kind of stop the baby murderers. So, Robert Bird.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here and attending this meeting today. I know the time was kind of random, but turned out to be convenient for everyone, so happy about that. So we're just going to get started. I'm going to take a seat so you guys can get a full view of the slideshow here.
Feel free to take photos of any of the slides.
Yes, and I would suggest, unless it helps you to keep track of questions you have, you don't have to write anything down. If you want to have a copy of the presentation afterwards, I can always send it to you by email. So,
will there be slides? Will there be slides?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. So, if you need to keep track of the questions you have in your head, you can write that down. Otherwise, feel free to not take any notes. All right, so subject number 1 here is going to be on the University of California, San Francisco. Show of hands, how many of you have heard a bit about, at least a little bit about the UCSF campaign by Pro-Life San Francisco? Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There we go.
And survivors.
And survivors.
Thank you.
Without Cheryl, Jeff, AJ, others, there would have not been as big of a reach to the public and media participation in covering the story. So thank you, Cheryl. So we have sources in the corner. The first thing to know about UCSF is this. Healthy children from healthy mothers, they are aborted at San Francisco General Hospital all the way up to the 24th week of pregnancy. For anyone who has studied, pregnancy information as part of their pro-life education, you'll know that at 24 weeks, the child has been was conceived about 22 weeks prior. So that child has been alive for 5.5 months. The gestational age, counting from 2 weeks prior to fertilization, is what brings the number up to 24 weeks. So there's different ways to measure the length of a pregnancy. 24 weeks since last menstrual period, or 22 weeks from conception is what's referenced right here. So General Hospital says on their website that they'll do abortions, without any medical reason needed, up to the 24th week of pregnancy, or LMP. So San Francisco General is also called Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital, and that is due to a big grant or donation from Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook and his wife Priscilla Chan. So they changed all the signage on the building. You'll see his name plastered around everywhere, and unfortunately on the 6th floor of the hospital in Ward 6G, that is where the abortion facility is doing their operations. And San Francisco General Hospital is one of multiple training hospitals for the University of California. So some of the UC schools are medical schools and research institutions, and that is the case with Zuckerberg. So when we reference General Hospital, we're talking about UCSF and vice versa. It's all working together as like this large partnership. Let's see. When it comes to the way they conduct abortions, when it comes to the way they choose to, kill the children at UCSF, they are against shots of digoxin or potassium chloride. Now, when you see this right here, how many people are aware of what I'm referencing right here? Okay. So basically, there's a great, source, a video illustration of this by Live Action, as well as things on the National Institutes of Health website that describe this procedure. Some other abortion facilities will take a drug called digoxin or potassium chloride. Potassium chloride is also used on death row. And get a syringe and stick the needle through the abdomen of the mother to shoot that drug either in the amniotic fluid surrounding the baby or in a random part of the baby or inject directly into the baby's heart. And this drug is meant to cause cardiac arrest or asystole, and that's seizing the beating of the heart, stops their heart and kills them in utero. UCSF, however, is against using this shot because they say it is unnecessary. So this means that when it comes to the abortion procedures, the child is still alive in utero when they're pulled apart with forceps, with those metal clamps, piece by piece, and therefore experiencing excruciating pain. There is another type of abortion that's essentially an attempted stillbirth. They provide, one of the drugs used is misoprostol to induce contractions, and there's a source I'll be showing you that states that it's essentially the trauma of the labor process that causes death to the child before they emerge, before they come out. So these are very horrific conditions to be, experiencing in the early parts of your life, whether you're pulled apart, without having had even the quote-unquote mercy of your heart having been stopped beforehand, or just these contractions causing trauma, these contractions brought on by misoprostol, and this is what our medical institutions in San Francisco are proud to applaud, support, continue training people to do, and it's just very egregious. Here is a screenshot from the UCSF.edu website, and it references an interview that the leader of the abortion division at UCSF, he was interviewed by the Boston Globe. His name's Philip Darney. His successor is a woman named Jody Steinauer.
Jody Steinauer sucks.
And right here says they do not use digoxin or potassium chloride injections to ensure fetal demise in late-term abortions. And right here, if you'll notice, as an aside, these days, have you guys heard a lot of people, like pro-choice advocates and people in the media, abortion advocates, they talk about, late-term abortion isn't a thing.
Right. Yeah.
Here's UCSF using that term on their own website. So
Right.
for the longest time, it's been an accepted term to use, and now only the pro-lifers are denigrated when we use that term, or laughed out of the room, or people try to attempt to laugh us out of the room.
They
when we
don't
use
even
that
know the
term.
medical terminology. It's like you're using it, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's colloquial terms, there's medical terms, it's like, there's terms all around of what that terminology to use. So we can use it too, or if we want to avoid that sidetrack, we can just talk about abortion after viability or abortion in the third trimester to be more specific. So, back to the main subject at hand. Philip Darney stated, "We do not believe that our patients should take a risk for which the only clear benefit is a legal one to the physician." And the article is called "Shots Assist in Aborting Fetuses." So, this is, of course, we're not trying to say, hey,
Use a shot.
use the shot. We're not saying that either.
No.
We're telling, our whole point, the pro-life movement, is telling the medical community to actually step up and halt all this, betraying of the public and betraying of mothers and fathers, because saying we'll kill your baby instead of we'll empower you to thrive with a growing family, like that's basically what they ought to be doing to create a solution, rather than expanding and promoting and supporting abortion, encouraging people to look into it and choose it. You have a
Well, isn't one of the strategies that we use is to
Anesthesia, do you have anesthesia for the fetus so it won't feel the pain of being torn apart?
Well, I have heard about anesthesia referenced when it comes to fetal surgery, when there's a health problem that
With a wanted fetus.
with a wanted child, yeah, and
Not for
wanted
abortion.
fetus. Right, I haven't ever heard of anesthesia being utilized in the pre-op process of abortion. Of course, I'd love to learn more if that's not actually the case, but so essentially what we're learning right here is that they won't use the drug to stop the heart of the child before they proceed with the abortion procedure. So they're ripped apart in utero, or disarticulated means, joints taken apart. That's the medical term. The colloquial term would be dismembered. So they're dismembered in utero while still alive at UCSF. Or if it's a labor induction termination, where basically the drug is administered to induce contractions, the trauma from contractions will cause their death, and then they emerge, induced stillbirth. So, the next point. I mentioned that UCSF is a biomedical university, in addition to training doctors and nurses. So they also have these research laboratories. And the really mind-blowing thing, I learned about this in 2018. The research laboratories have projects, like a series of experiments where they, will need to utilize a specimen of some kind in order to study a disease, in order to study human development, in order to study drugs, like drug testing. They decide to knock on the door of the abortion facility and say, hey, that abortion you told us about, is it done yet? Essentially, is that child dead yet that you told us about? Because we want their lungs, we want their skin, we want their genitals even to use in our experiments. And when I first learned about this type of thing, it was back in 2015. Many people may have heard about the Undercover Planned Parenthood videos and the work of David Daleiden.
Yes.
Well, that specific effort references similar studies. So the fact that multiple companies will go to abortion businesses, multiple Planned Parenthoods or family planning associates, and be like, hey, we've been in constant communication with you. We know that abortions are scheduled, and hey, we want to continue partnering with you to receive an ongoing supply of these organs that we can use. And essentially just setting up a system where the abortionists expect to be depended on by these institutions on an ongoing basis, kind of justifying, creating an artificial need for abortion because, hey, the researchers are going to keep knocking on our door.
Right.
And then the researchers are like, well, this is the most convenient way for us to do this. So to create one distinction between David Daleiden's work and our work focused on UCSF, the remains of the murdered children at UCSF are all used in-house. So you have an abortion center underneath the umbrella of a company, and underneath the same umbrella, a research lab. There's no buying or selling taking place when it comes to UCSF abortionists. The abortionists just have tissue collectors come over, do their further dissections and collections, and then transport them to various UCSF buildings across the city. So there's no, whether it's an illegal for-profit purchase from the UCSF abortionist or a legal reimbursement. When you're talking about the controversy at UCSF with aborted fetal tissue research, the abortionists aren't selling anything. So that's a point of conversation in the David Daleiden Planned Parenthood subject. Do you have a
Aren't they, though, UCSF is purchasing them from other places though?
That is correct. So there are companies, a company called Advanced Bioscience Resources that is another source of organs that the UCSF research labs use. So those transactions are taking place. Still more studying would need to be done, more in-depth investigation to see whether it's like one or both of these types of things going on when it comes to that. But on the abortionist end, they're not selling parts out to other companies, other institutions.
So that price sheet that you guys had released that you found, you got through the public records request, that was between AVR and UCSF?
Yeah, between ABR and the UCSF research labs.
And that was perfectly legal?
We have to investigate further and dig deeper.
Because what they say is it's illegal to exchange those body parts, to sell body parts for valuable consideration.
So if we're ready to get to the next slide, I guess it's not too bad to ask questions and answers
Yeah, of
before
course,
the end.
anytime. Yeah.
Does anyone need any clarification up to this point? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Here is, here are a couple of screenshots from one of the published studies that you can find on the National Institutes of Health website. Human fetal salivary glands were harvested from postmortem fetuses obtained from elective legal abortions at San Francisco General Hospital. Further down on the same exact document, it says fetuses between 22 and 24 weeks of gestation were utilized for this study. And the humanity of these children is just so apparent. They say things like their sex was confirmed through genetic analysis. It's hard for me to share this information in a teaching manner and bring emotion into it at the same time. So I know that I might be sounding very emotionless, like very strange in a way, but it's just because it's really hard for me to, give the proper emotion that's due to the subject. I imagine for some other people who would be presenting this might have an easier time, accessing their emotions while getting this data and information out, but it's just, I can only do one at a time, I think, so.
You compartmentalize.
I compartmentalize it, yes. So if anyone here feels they'd be able to incorporate.
Okay, who wants to get up and cry?
Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah. So don't let my method be like a model for how to talk about this with people, because emotion is very important when it comes to sharing all of this with the public.
What are the numbers?
Oh.
How many are we talking about?
So there was there's a section of the National Institutes of Health website that talks about the money that's given to researchers to start, a series of studies. A series of studies is called a project, and all of these NIH-funded projects at UCSF are listed out, and you can see the number of projects by year. It gets a little complicated when it comes to figuring out which ones are choosing to rely on an ongoing continual supply of aborted remains. So tallying that is a difficult thing, but we do know one contract that existed between the National Institutes of Health and UCSF said that they'll get this many thousands of dollars of federal money if they do a project that involves collecting 2 fetuses every month for 6 years. And this contract was a renewal of a previous 6-year contract. And so we know that one researcher out of a list of at least a dozen at the same time, or that might be kind of premature to state. I have to look through the information again, but one of multiple researchers doing an aborted fetal tissue research project was like knocking on the door of San Francisco General Hospital or another UCSF hospital where abortions also take place, the Mount Zion Hospital, for a period of 12 years, collecting probably 2 children's remains every month.
And what age were those children?
So a lot of studies specifically state like 18 through 24 weeks or 22 through 24 weeks. I have seen a study that said that 13-week, the uteruses of twins were collected from 13-week fetuses. So they'll go earlier than 18 weeks as well when it comes to their collections. But so it's a wide range. So from what I've seen so far, the studies I've read span from like 13 to 24 weeks.
And remember that these are elective, healthy pregnancies.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
they have to have healthy pregnancies.
Are the women paid in any way?
They are not. No.
Is the abortion free when they do it?
No.
Okay.
They still charge you?
They still
Yeah,
charge
there's
them
still
like
a
regular?
charge either on the customer or on Medi-Cal.
Okay.
The UCSF website. Let me just scroll back. real
Medical
quick.
covers abortion?
Yeah, California. Yeah, Medi-Cal. It covers abortion and on the.
And your employee like health thing, that
Yeah.
does as well.
If you scan this QR code, you'll see that on the General Hospital's webpage, they have a link where you can learn about how to obtain, a fully government-funded, state-funded abortion in California. Pressuring them to think that giving up their child's body is a good thing. Low-income people and
Which the Medi-Cal, which our taxpayer dollars pay for roundabout,
Yeah.
is not really, is that under a different
Exactly.
jurisdiction than the, whatchamacallit, Kristen? That, Hyde Amendment?
Yeah, so that's federal funds can't be is Hyde.
So,
Yeah.
that's, okay.
And the thing about Hyde too is if Hyde's repealed, that means that FQHCs can also start providing abortions. So it's really important to support the Hyde Amendment, but that's a non-separate.
Okay, yeah, sorry to get us off track.
No, you're
yeah, no
good.
problem at all. I do want to go further into that, but I'm not going to let myself.
I'm tantalizing
Yeah,
you.
exactly. I'm not going to sidetrack myself. Okay, so let me go to this real quick before I. Feel free to take some time to read this yourself, and you tell me what it says. Like, feel free to give like 10, 20 seconds, and then someone raise their hand if they want to give their summary of what they're saying right here.
Ouch.
Yeah. Wild and
Women to give up their babies for medical science.
so
It's a contract.
I mean, yeah. So basically it's like after they've already said that they're gonna get an abortion, it's like another consent form for that tissue's gonna be used for research, and the way they word everything is just so like calm, like like pregnancy tissue, like I mean it's highlighted right there, but like things like that just to make it sound like if you fill this out, nothing like worse is happening type thing. Like it doesn't really matter, like but it'll help us and it won't do anything for you.
Yeah.
Or your child for that matter. The child's not even relevant.
Further down on the document, it has the lines or
They sign
at
it
your
and date
signature.
it.
Yeah, sign and date it.
It also makes it seem like they're helping people, so they're like, research with pregnancy tissue has been used to help people.
Oh yeah,
And
they're like
it's
guilting ya.
And so they're pulling on the emotional strings, like, oh, you're gonna do this, but it's gonna be for the greater good, it's gonna be something good, so they're posting it.
And
it's good.
yeah, that's a good point. It makes you feel
Portray
better
it. Yeah.
about getting
You're
an
like,
abortion,
oh, yeah.
basically. Like,
Well,
oh, this is gonna help
but at least
people.
I'll be able to do something good for someone else.
Yeah.
They're, through this consent form, essentially luring someone closer in and deeper into their decision to have an abortion. Someone can change their mind at any time, but can you imagine how much harder it is to change your mind and choose life if you're presented with something like this? So that's one of the most egregious things. And some critics may say, oh, but isn't the decision whether to donate pregnancy tissue done after the abortion happens? It's not. It's before.
So that could also be seen as.
Will not affect how or when my abortion is done. This
So
is
it's
given
free.
before
It's
the
a great
Yeah.
thing
And
to
I-
pay attention to.
right.
And I feel like that's much
I
less
would
ethical.
feel like that's like emotional coercion,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Um,
And I remember, let's see, let me just go back here. So the consent form is given to the parent before the abortion appointment, influencing whether they will follow through with their decision. Takes away the chance for minds to change. There's a typo. Describes. The form describes children as merely pregnancy tissue. That was right here. If you're willing to donate pregnancy
Pregnancy
tissue, it's
tissue.
like
They're literally viable.
It doesn't even
outside
say
of
You
the-
wouldn't give up your placenta? No, it's their child.
Yeah.
Right.
So is this like even a valid consent form then? Because like if it just says pregnancy tissue, does it even include the baby's organs?
Yeah.
Like how
It's
can
like
you
food
call that
sample.
pregnancy tissue?
Yeah.
Well, what sucks is that pregnancy tissue, like, legally, medically does include
It does,
fetus
okay.
and organs.
Right, it includes.
But like people read it, like someone who's I mean,
Right.
Deceptive, yeah.
Yeah.
What if
I think they use this mostly too to balance the guilt that a woman would
Yeah.
have, you
Right.
know, that it offsets the guilt.
Because I wonder if it
Yeah.
explicitly said we're willing to donate my fetus or
They
whatever.
should.
Like then I feel like less people will be like okay with that.
They should have the word fetus on there.
But,
Actually, this form shouldn't exist at all, but.
well, yeah,
that's
that too. Yeah.
Okay. So there are, like many of you brought up, informed consent issues here. So that form is not on a ucsf.edu webpage or .org webpage. We received it in our email inbox from UCSF. And the public records request that we put in has a number code. So anyone who wants to know whether the form we obtained is
Legit.
actually is legit,
So you did like a FOIA request?
yeah, they can give their own request, a California Public Records Act request. Anyone, anywhere, can send their own email to UCSF, say, hey, can I receive the same documents from Public Records Act number 020-107? And then they'll receive the same
They
exact
have to
form
get it now.
in their
Wow.
They
inbox.
have to get it.
They'll receive it straight from UCSF as well. All right, so we're gonna go forward.
That's a good point.
So, prior to all experiments and prior to the abortions, the scientist plans to use the body parts of aborted children. They decide to rely on ongoing deaths and conscious torture for the older children because, as we already saw, they're up to 24 weeks gestation. We feel pain at that time. All of us felt pain at that point in our growth. So these scientists, when they write their study design, they have the chance to include other types of specimens. There are ethical alternatives they can use, and I would say even in the absence of an ethical alternative for a specific niche study, the ethical thing to do would be to shelve that project until the time when an ethical alternative is available to utilize. We can't create a class of human beings that are guinea pigs for science, and that's what UCSF has done. Let's see. Let me go to the next one. Oh, this QR code will lead you to one of the next slides I'm going to show you here. So this is a screenshot from one of the study designs. So this was written by a scientist prior to knocking on the door of the abortion facility, prior to collecting the organs, prior to conducting those experiments. So, timetable. We plan to carry out the proposed experiments following the table below. So during year 1 and year 2, let's see, they plan to do something using fetal salivary glands. Remember that study I showed you earlier that said that fetal salivary glands are collected? So they're going to do a specific process or a study using fetal
getting
salivary
colder.
glands. So this document was an application that a researcher filled to receive money from the National Institutes of Health. Because it costs money to do an experiment, whatever types of specimens you're using. So the federal government they I guess subsidizes isn't the right word. They fund these studies because there's a great public benefit to scientific research. Just ethical research ought to be the
Supposedly.
standard. So this application proposes to study cells and tissues isolated from both adult human biopsies and aborted fetal tissues. Right there. Let's see. The samples. Okay. I guess I don't need to read further here for purposes of the presentation, but you get the gist. And this was a statement by the head educational person at UCSF, Dr. Samuel Hawgood. During the
I
previous
don't need long-term.
presidential
That's what
administration,
it is.
there were some limitations and regulations put on aborted fetal tissue research. Trump did not eradicate it completely, it was still continuing, but there were some minor limitations placed on it. And Sam Hoggett at UCSF came out and said, I strongly oppose this decision by the Department of Health and Human Services to discontinue some fetal tissue research by scientists, and trying to justify creating a class of human guinea pigs by saying, well, fetal tissue is used in important research aimed at discovering cures for illnesses that affect the lives of millions of Americans. What happened to medical ethics?
That is exactly what they say about animal testing. Like, animal testers will say, like, it's so important for these reasons. Like, I don't know if it's exact conditions that they'll list, but it's always stuff like that. And I'm like,
People seem to have a bit of amnesia, like, higher up, like, all these people. It's like they say, well, you know, creating these unnecessary regulations have no basis in science. It doesn't have to do with science, it has to do with ethics.
mm-hmm.
Both, like, it should operate hand in hand. So, I'm going to go forward.
Science shouldn't define ethics.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Whatever, we
Ethical
shouldn't
science is
do
the only science.
anything we can do.
Right. Yeah, they're making a science, an ethical claim. They're making ethical claims from the stance of science.
Right.
And that's just a fallacy in itself, because science is a different category. It's not ethics.
Right. Try to go quicker.
Oh,
As pro-life activists, we're aware of certain terminology like a D and E abortion, the disarticulation and evacuation, when metal forceps are used to reach up into the uterus of the mother and grab and pull apart the child. The other type that I referenced earlier is utilizing a drug to cause contractions and basically try to cause a stillbirth, labor induction terminations. They have a high risk of live delivery, live births, late in pregnancy. When, and this is specifically when that injection of the feticidal drug is not used. So if you're not stopping the heart with digoxin or potassium chloride, and it's late in pregnancy, that child has a risk of being born alive 50% of the time.
Wow.
And
So labor-induced actually 50% of the time actually kills the baby just without digoxin, or?
Yes.
yeah, so increasing gestational age is one of the factors for live birth. So the older the child is, the more likely it is that they'll be born alive, rather
Just
than
the
it being a
process
stillbirth.
of the birthing process and the drugs that they give to induce labor and everything, because it's more that process than the
I'll show you this real quick and then go back to the previous slide. So this is a source, like a viewpoint neutral source from the government, Congressional Research Service. Abortion at or over 20 weeks gestation was the title of this document, written in 2018 or updated in 2018. And they mentioned right here, in medical abortions, so, you know, abortion pill, I guess, you know, referencing mifepristone and misoprostol, neither of those drugs kills the fetus. So that is something that is very important to remember.
Is that true? I thought it starved them.
Well, this is specifically talking about
Later ages.
late term or
Oh,
late second
okay.
trimester abortion. This is where I've been getting my language. The trauma of labor usually results in the death of the fetus up through 21 weeks of pregnancy. Usually, but not always. However, some fetuses at 22 weeks gestation or after may survive labor associated with medical abortion. And there's more sources from even pro-choice institutions that state the same thing. Those sources are linked on our website. So let me go back. When interviewed by PolitiFact, there was a representative from UCSF who said, well, we've never had a live birth, but they've been doing abortions for decades. And this is just not feasible. Like, it is a statistical impossibility that they've never encountered a live birth. And the very concerning thing is that they don't have any protocol or instructions on their books for how to provide medical care in those scenarios. Also very concerning. And so we know that children at 24 weeks are being aborted. We know that one of the methods used is labor induction termination. We know that since they're not using that feticidal injection to stop the heart, that there's an increased risk for some of these children to be born alive. And they don't have any instructions, steps on what to do when there's a live birth. Then you have someone coming out stating that there's been no live births in our hospital. That is seriously concerning to us, which is why we brought this to the public. Did you have a question, Jason?
Yeah, I was wondering where you got the 50% from.
Yes, the 50% is from Contraception Journal, which is it sounds like a very odd thing, but there's a publication, a medical journal called Contraception Journal. They also cover other topics, including abortion. So they stated that 50% of the time, late in pregnancy, when feticidal injection is not used, a live birth can take place, or the risk of a particular fetus being born alive is 50%.
Is that the only place that says it?
I
thought that there were some others that
There
said
were,
it too.
yeah,
Okay.
there were others. Yes, Ayala?
So like the summation of all this data basically, it heavily implies that they're killing them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And we feel that, let's see, in summary, criminal activity is likely taking place behind closed doors. Murder after accidental live births, or homicide if they don't realize the child's alive and don't provide medical care just because they're not checking.
Like negligent homicide.
Exactly. So, the legal and already fully documented horrors of the institution that I've been talking about create a strong case that crime is taking place as well. So an investigation is fully justified. That is one of the main purposes of our UCSF initiative or campaign, to bring about an investigation into crimes likely taking place. And when it comes to things that are already fully documented from UCSF's own, their own, web pages,
Journals.
documents, exactly, their own studies, the outcry for ethical research is urgent and it is growing. So, would love to, let's see, before I move on to the next subject, ask if you have any questions.
Well, I just, following what Ayala just said, like, I remember asking you about this before, like, well, I wanted to know, like, how they're dying, and you were saying, like, when the babies are born alive, what are they doing? Are they putting a pillow over their head? Are they putting them in a broom closet, like we've heard? Yeah, but you were suggesting it's possible that they just start dismembering them.
Well, actually, the reference to dismemberment was about the live D&Es. So them being a D&E happening when they're still alive in utero. When it comes to what a tissue collector does to collect, samples, to collect specimens for their research projects, they're doing dissections. So a child could be dissected when their heart is still beating, if there's like some pulsation of the umbilical cord, which is one of the signs of life mentioned in like medical literature. So, and it's been, there have been documented cases of born alive children being neglected in the past, allowed to be killed, saved at the last minute, or maybe saved as well once discovered, So there's a range of outcomes when it comes to, what will happen to a child born alive. They'll either be rescued, eventually rescued, murdered outright, or, as in the case of Kermit Gosnell, but he's not the only instance, or just the signs of life aren't checked for, aren't that noticeable. Like if it's just a very faint heartbeat, very slight pulsation of the umbilical cord, and no one's looking for that, no one's checking that, no one comes across that, then you have a negligent act take place, so leads to their death.
There's also an incentive for them to get the freshest tissue possible. So to have a baby born alive for them is actually, in their eyes, in the research eyes, is a bonus. because
beneficial.
they get the freshest tissue possible, you know, and because as soon as the baby dies, then its tissue starts to degrade,
Right.
and so it makes it.
Right. So the shortest amount of time for, I guess, many types of studies, shortest amount of time between abortion and retrieving the specimens on like this study bench, minimizing that time window is very beneficial for a lot of scientific applications.
So did,
Sorry, Melanie?
Yes. Okay. Question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I genuinely don't know. What is happening at UCSF? Is this just like an outlier? Like this is only happening at
Great
UCSF?
question.
Or
No.
This is happening throughout the country, and
Pittsburgh.
this just happens to be the one school where people care enough to expose it and try to save the babies.
Great question.
There's this type of scientific research is happening nationwide. So I referenced a company called Advanced Bioscience Resources. They're actually based in the Bay Area, and we protested them almost 2 years ago, actually. Advanced Bioscience Resources, or ABR, is a company that will connect various abortion facilities, various abortion businesses, with various scientific researchers around the country. Even federal scientific research labs have worked with ABR as the middleman to bring body parts to their laboratories. And there are other ways where, like the UCSF model, like they're not like the ones who initiated this, but other institutions where both the abortions and the research is happening under the same roof. Like, it's skipping my mind right now. I know that the University of Pittsburgh is doing this research, but I can't remember if the abortionists work for the university or not. But this, whether both under the same roof or there's,
Washington?
groups cooperating. University of Washington, thank you. Yeah, the abortions happen at their hospital.
I would say
And
that
there's the research labs.
UCSF is particularly important though because they're training the late-term abortionists.
Exactly.
Yeah,
is Eleanor Dry actually training other places or just those 3 places?
so the way that Eleanor Dry's work is under the UCSF Ryan Residency, which is an abortion training program, and they export Ryan residencies across the country as well. So other med schools in various states will have a Ryan residency program that's partly funded and given the initial boost by UCSF.
And the University of New Mexico is one of the big ones, right?
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. So this is our UCSF initiative. You can learn a lot more at this link, prolifesf.com/harvestingjustice. We created a program where people can watch, a discussion similar to our presentation and back and forth we've been having right here. And so that's that. Now we'll move to the next and final topic, the DuPont Clinic. Yes?
Has anybody claimed any benefit from all this research?
Good point.
Well, no diseases have been cured. I know there's been at least one drug I've learned about that is on the market. It's like, treat symptoms of a certain ailment. And as I mentioned earlier, whatever, treatments or cures you can get out of something, that doesn't justify what happened to the victims in the past.
No, but you can't claim that there is a benefit from all this research.
You could say that there's no unique benefit in the sense that they could have
Done it.
gotten the same, results from different means, from ethical tissue
Okay,
sources.
so we can argue that it's all unnecessary or even detrimental.
Mm-hmm. Jason?
Can you explain the humanized mice abstract?
Yes. So let me go back here. So one of the research studies that we've seen published on the National Institutes of Health talks about how intact segments of fetal intestine were transplanted subcutaneously onto the back of mice in order to constitute a human immune system inside this mouse, so to be useful for drug testing. And So subcutaneously, that it means like underneath the skin. So they take these segments of intestines from a 24-week child, 24-week fetus, cut open the back of a lab mouse, or lab rat is, I guess, the more familiar term a lot of us hear usually, and transplant that piece of intestine under the skin into that mouse, sew it up, and essentially this mouse will develop a human immune system so that you can study what happens to the mouse when you test various drugs.
And then you dissect the mouse. You
Yeah,
have to euthanize and then dissect the mouse. And
yeah, I can show you that study
Yeah.
as well at some point.
Are all humanized mice using babies?
They're not all using aborted remains. In fact, there was one thing I've read, keep referencing the National Institutes of Health, and that's because I'm getting the information straight from them. There's another document on that website that talks about how another mouse model is called the neothigh mouse, or neonatal thymus mouse. Essentially, the human tissues that they use to implant into a mouse come from a child who has had to undergo surgery soon after birth. Some children are born with an overabundance of thymus, so they, soon after they're born, they undergo a surgery, that excess thymus tissue is removed, and that tissue has been utilized to, implant into these lab mice. And
Does it work?
Does it work?
When they implant it, does
Yes.
it work? Okay.
It works.
Good skip.
So there's in that instance, it's an example of how focusing on just wanting to keep targeting these unborn babies and creating an environment where there's a risk of murder to take place by employees. None of that is necessary to do or to risk when there are, when
less
there's other
unethical.
tissues. Yes, as I would say, less unethical. Yeah. So, sorry about the mice, Hannah.
Yeah.
So, subject 2, DuPont. So, there's an abortion facility based in Washington, D.C. that tweeted about expanding their operations to Los Angeles. So, while at first glance of this news, some people might be like, oh wow, they're going to leave D.C. and go to LA. No, they're staying in D.C. too. So,
They're expanding.
sad thing is that they're expanding. This is the tweet they put out. DuPont Clinic is thrilled to announce that we're expanding to LA. We plan to open fall 2023 under the leadership of family planning OBGYN. The need for ultramester abortion care has never been greater. What in the world? What the heck? So, they're going to be opening an ultramester killing center in California. They're not shy about their willingness to abort, in the 3rd trimester for no medical reason whatsoever.
So gnarly.
And this is a screenshot from their website. I'm going to zoom in. So when it comes to their current operations in DC, if you are 26 weeks or later into your pregnancy, we can still see you regardless of medical history, background, and notifications. No particular reason needed. So this is what's coming to California. Anyone have anything they want to say?
Is that updated? Because I just looked at
Lockdown.
26 to 31 weeks.
What?
To 31.
Yeah, I just looked and
Lockdown
I looked the
DuPont.
other day and it said 26 weeks to 31 weeks. Did they update it or is that?
I think it must have been from a different webpage on the website,
Okay.
because I took this screenshot today.
Okay.
The thing that we have to help people to realize is that we actually do have the power to stop them. Kristen did some research on some, I think the California Secretary of State or similar. Was it the Secretary of State website where
Yes.
you found the address of where they are?
They filed articles of incorporation, which had included the address that they would be opening the facility on.
And it's
Which
in a large
Lauren gave
medical.
you that little tactic because she's used it before. It's in a medical complex with multiple places. There's like a foot place, a dentist place. Was that an ice cream cart? But yeah, they're opening in that medical complex, so
Mhm.
we're we're gonna give them hell before they open.
Yes. You
Okay.
see this picture
That's
here.
our next thing after this weekend of action is we're focusing on DuPont.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about this photo right here? Don't
Yeah,
get
so this
distracted by
was
Instagram.
this was a photo from DC, and many of you know. I think this is the DC Planned Parenthood we usually go to.
It
But
is.
yeah, they basically were like, we're opening this new facility, and pro-lifers were like, oh hell no. So they kept protesting the construction site, and Lauren told me several times that a bunch of the workers like just got up and left, and we're like, we're not building a murder mill, like we're leaving.
Wow.
So there's stuff that we can do before it opens, and in fact, just like the Walgreens thing, it's more important to stop them before they start, because once they start, it's harder to get them to stop. But if we can raise hell, if we can make everyone else in the medical complex annoyed, we don't want abortion people here because there's going to be protests all the time, and the city will be annoyed, and all the neighborhood will be annoyed, all their neighbors will be annoyed, and hopefully we can throw a wrench in their logistics.
Nice.
That's the goal. So I wanted to.
One of our flyers.
Yeah, here's one of our flyers. We've had a couple times we pasted out there, but now we need to focus on doing a direct action. We want to do a mass protest there, and since it's technically not a abortion facility yet, the FACE Act won't apply. So we need to do we need to do a giant Operation Rescue style sit-in, block it all out, do something like that. So we're planning something like that for the future. I love all of your inputs. I love all your ideas. Everyone has a new, unique thing to offer, a new idea, a new tip. So we're doing that. That's our next thing.
Do you have an estimated time of when that would be? Like after South
really?
Carolina?
And that's our Q&A. So feel free to come in here, Kristen.
It might be later, but I want to get it done like soon.
Yeah.
Can you stand there, Kristen? Because my head hurts.
Good job, Robert.
Have
So
let's go, Robert.
Okay. Wait, how many of you learned something that you didn't hear yet today? How many of you learned
Probably.
something new? Yeah, let's go. Okay, Hannah.
Question. Okay, so to DuPont. What has already been like as far as like asks or reach outs besides like leaflet like neighbor reach
Not
out? What
much
has
yet.
been done to like address this concern publicly, like with officials or whatever?
Nothing. We need people on the ground. We need activists, and we've been preoccupied with other things, but now we want to full steam ahead put all of our resources into this.
Because I feel like we should do at least one or two
City
reach
council
outs
meeting.
beforehand, or city council or whatever, before elevating to the NVDA. Which I still think we should
Great
do
point.
soon, but I think we should
Hannah
do this
wanted to do
soon.
NVDA.
Oh, wow, yeah. I only talk about bike locking myself to places every day.
What's up, Melanie?
Oh, we're just figuring out
the
Oh.
NDA.
Okay, cool. Let's think. Well,
We should
part
at least
of the
send
reason we're
emails.
presenting this is because I want your input. So let's think. Maybe we
Yeah,
can do it a little later.
'Cause
Maybe we can get more people built up.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
We can get more of a ruckus built around it beforehand.
I'm thinking because it sounds like for this like.
What if it's a summertime thing? What if
Right.
we start in the beginning of summer when all the students are getting out of school?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we build pressure until the start of summer, and then we get the students into it.
Right,
And that gives
especially.
us more time.
I think we could get more people, and it's great. Like if we had, say, 2.5 or 3 months, and we're just like letting pro-lifers know, like, come. This is like we're gonna have a major action.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge because it sounds like for this type of NVDA, you would want a lot of you would want a lot of people, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Great point.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was called. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. But there was that one summer where the rescue movement. just
Summer
went-
of Mercy.
Yeah, the summer of mercy where they would just went ham and they just did it. And I think that we should structure it like that. And just something constantly
Ooh,
happening.
that would be
pissing
hot.
me off.
That would be
so
hot.
hot.
So I was gonna add to what Emma was saying.
I was there.
Yes.
Oh. Were you what?
94.
Oh,
South Mercy.
Yeah.
I was there. I got arrested.
Fun time.
That's
As
cool.
a
Okay,
child.
so-
Wow.
All I was gonna say to what Emma was saying is like, my experience with NVDA is mostly with DXC type PETA stuff, but like we have started campaigns where like the first like real action we did was an NVDA action, and we've of course also escalated to an NVDA action, and I think both can work. It's all in the framing of how you go about it. I also really like the idea of like basically having this running plan of doing a bunch of NVDA over and over again. I kind of like that as well, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be totally fine to even do it like a 2-person NVDA the first time or something like that.
Yeah.
It definitely is possible, but it's also a good idea to at least have some kind of background of why it seems valid to jump to this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's make like a really intense video. Be like, you remember Justice for the 5. Justice for the 5 is happening again, and now in California because of Prop 1. And then like show photos of the babies and be like, we can stop this before it happens. Like, you know,
And
telling
someone's
people-
got to dress as Gavin Newsom, someone's got to dress as Satan.
Someone that dresses Jesus. We gotta have all the characters.
Jesus and Trump versus Cuomo and the devil.
We need Obama to have a comeback.
Just have
Literally,
random
I
children do it
need
all.
your
There you go, you
money
can play